One of the movies which took over the critics and internet this year was Morbius. This movie revolves around a doctor which turns himself into a human-bat hybrid in pursuit to find a cure for his disability, and today we will be recapping it. So let's start. Somewhere in Costa Rica, a helicopter lands at the mouth of a bat cave, and a man with his walking cane steps out of it along with a bunch of mercenaries. He orders them to plant the bat-capturing trap at the opening of the cave, and cuts through his palm with the help of a knife, letting his blood drip out and inviting the bats towards him in order to trap them. The man's identity is revealed as we are shown his past. An intelligent young boy named Michael Morbius is living a disabled life in a hospital in Greece due to a rare blood disease. Soon he welcomes his surrogate brother Lucian, who belongs to a wealthy family and carries the same disease. Michael renames him Milo. Over the course of time they bond together and eventually become best friends. Later, while they are both undergoing a regular blood transfusion treatment, Milo's medical equipment dysfunctions, causing him to faint. Michael immediately calls for help, but with no nurse around, he decides to help his friend himself. With the help of a tiny spring, he manages to fix Milo's machine and saves his life. The hospital director, Dr. Nicholas, is extremely impressed by Michael's intelligence and decides to send him to New York so he can study medical. He promises Michael that he will take care of Milo in his absence. As Michael leaves, he writes a letter to Milo, promising him that he will find a cure for their disease. Unfortunately, as Milo is reading the letter, it gets blown out of the window and into the street. As Milo walks out to retrieve his letter, he finds a bunch of school students reading it and mocking them for their disability. Milo tries to fight back, but ends up being bullied. Dr. Nicholas arrives at the scene and rescues him. 25 years goes by and Michael establishes himself as the world's leading doctor against blood diseases. Soon he is awarded the Nobel Prize for his life-saving development of artificial blood, but Michael refuses the prize, claiming that he cannot accept it for a result of his failed experiment. Back at his lab, Michael is taking care of a young girl named Anna. This is when he is confronted by his co-worker Dr. Martin about his research on fusing human blood with bat blood. At first, Michael denies any such research, but when she reveals a glass tunnel full of bats to him, he accepts it and explains to her that what he is doing is needed to cure him and his best friend Milo. Worried for him, Martin agrees to help him in his research. They inject the human bat blood into a lab rat for their experiment, but their hopes are dulled when the rat faints and falls to the ground. A nurse rushes in and calls for help as Anna is struggling for her life in the bed. Michael and Martin manage to save her by putting her in coma, and this is when Martin notices that the lab rat has came back to life. She informs Michael about it, and he decides to head over to Milo to deliver this good news. The next day, Michael meets Milo and Dr. Nicholas. Before he moves forward with his research, he needs Milo to fund him to rent a mercenary vessel in the international waters with his lab equipment, so he can carry out his illegal experiment safely. Milo agrees, and Michael, along with Martin, prepare to do their human trial of the research. Martin injects him with the remixed blood and straps him to a surgical chair, hoping that it will finally cure his disease. While she is waiting for the results, one of the mercenaries walks into the lab to see what's happening. As Martin is arguing with him to leave, they both notice that Michael is not on his chair. They unlock the experiment room, and as they walk in, they notice Michael, transformed into a human-bat hybrid with amazing strength, hanging to the ceiling of the room. The Merc alerts his entire team to come down to the lab before getting killed by Michael. Martin escapes the room and locks the door, asking him to stop as Michael drains the blood out of the dead mercenary. He begins to start breaking the glass wall to get out of the room as the rest of the mercs enter the lab. Martin tries to stop them from shooting at him, but she is pushed away. This further enrages Michael, and he obliterates the rest of the ship crew. Once he has drank blood from all the crew members, he returns back to his human form, but this time he does not need canes to stand and notices a visible growth in his muscles. Not remembering anything, he makes his way back to the lab, and through the surveillance footage he finds out that he is responsible for all the destruction. He makes a Mayday radio call and asks for an airlift rescue before jumping off the ship and leaving. The next day, FBI arrives on the ship to investigate the scene. Martin is shifted to a hospital so she can be questioned once she awakes. Agent Stroud and his team discover that all of the victims have been drained of their blood. The surveillance footages are deleted, and the Mayday call was not made by Martin but an unknown male. On the other hand, Milo gets to know about the accident on the news, and he is seen worried. Michael enters his lab discreetly and slowly starts to feel weak. He decides to drink the artificial blood developed by him, stabilizing himself once again. He starts to test his new powers and weaknesses. After a little research, he finds out that artificial blood won't keep him going for a long time, and he would eventually need to consume actual human blood in order to maintain his new self. He decides to lock himself in a room and decides that he would rather die than to live a life of a bloodthirsty murderer. This is when Milo walks in the lab and sees Michael in a terrible shape, begging him to bring blood for him. He is amazed to see that Michael has successfully cured himself and he no longer has to live a crippled life. But Michael informs him that this is not a cure but a curse. Milo disagrees, claiming that it is what they always wanted, and demands Michael to inject him with the serum as well. Michael refuses and threatens Milo to leave the lab before he gets hurt. This leaves Milo no choice except leaving quietly. Later that night, Michael's lab assistant is murdered in the hallway, and her body is drained of blood. The next morning, medical authorities are called in at the lab, and Michael realizes that he has taken yet another human life. He packs up a bag full of blood and tries to escape the building before the police arrives. But to his surprise, the FBI agents are already there to question him about the ship accident. Michael denies any of their claims, but before he could leave, the agents are informed of another similar murder at the lab. This gives them the reason to arrest Michael, but he transforms into his bat form and fights back, escaping to the roof where he is cornered by Agent Stroud and finally arrested. At prison, Michael informs the agents that he has no idea how he turned into a monster, and he does not wish to hurt anyone. He demands them to bring blood for him as he is starting to feel weak. The agents leave without succumbing to his demands. A little later, Milo arrives to meet him in the disguise of his lawyer. He reassures him that he will help him to get out of the prison and everything will be okay. Before leaving, he gives a bag of human blood to Michael and walks out of the room. Michael notices that Milo has left his walking cane in his cell and realizes that he had stolen the serum and taken it himself. As Milo walks out of the prison, Michael also transforms into his bat form and breaks out. With the help of his bat ears, he manages to hear Milo getting into a fight with a civilian and killing him. Michael rushes towards him and makes an attempt to stop Milo. He refuses to stop, claiming that they are finally free to do whatever they want to, and they don't have to worry about anyone else. Milo also reveals that he was the one who murdered the nurse in his lab after taking the serum. This makes Michael furious, and both of them get into a fight, taking each other into the subway. They are interrupted by a team of police officers, but before they could stop them, Milo kills them all and celebrates doing it. Disappointed, Michael walks away and tells Milo that he does not want to fight him, to which Milo disagrees and rushes towards Michael to fight him. Michael manages to escape with the help of the wind generated in the subway by the train. Soon the detectives arrive at the subway crime scene. Enraged even more, they believe these are the acts of Michael and decide to act much aggressively against him from now onwards. The next day, Michael meets with Martine at a cafe. He informs her that it was not him that murdered the nurse or the police officers. He asks her to bring him a couple of items from the lab so that he can come up with a solution. Martine agrees to help him. While they are both conversating on the table, a couple of thugs come in and hand over counterfeit bills to the cashier in return of actual ones. Michael notices this crime and decides to go after them. He walks into their hideout place and successfully scares them with his superhuman powers, taking over their place and turning it into his new lab. On the other hand, Milo decides to celebrate his new form in a club, where he gets into a fight with a bunch of men and ends up killing them outside of the club. After that, he makes his way to the lab where he runs into Martine. Milo believes that she must know where Michael is hiding as both of them are pretty close, but Martine denies it and does not tell him anything. He believes her and leaves, after which she gathers the stuff and goes back to Michael. Back at the hideout place, Michael successfully develops an antidote to the serum which would be helpful to kill Milo and later on himself. Later that night, Michael and Martine finally confess their love for each other and kiss. Unknown to them, Milo has followed Martine from the lab and is now aware of their current position. The next day, the detectives investigate the murder scene at the club. Luckily, the crime was caught in the surveillance cameras there, and they finally find out that the murders are committed by someone else and not Michael. This news is aired on television, and Nicholas is finally aware of Milo's true form. He travels to Milo's home and asks him to stop. Blinded by his power and thirst, Milo kills Nicholas and uses him as a bait to call over Michael to his place so he can kill him as well. Michael gets Nicholas' call for help but fails to reach there in time. While he shares his final moment with Nicholas, Milo has Martine under his mercy and makes her beg for help by calling out Michael, once again baiting Michael to come to him. Michael immediately rushes towards her, but it's too late as she is lying wounded on the rooftop. She asks Michael to drink her blood and finish Milo off. While they kiss for one last time, Michael drops a drop of his blood into Martine's mouth and she dies in his arms. He drinks some of her blood before engaging in an intense battle with Milo. They fight through sky and building before breaking into the ground. When underground, Michael makes a powerful scream, calling a horde of bats to his help. He manages to successfully throw Milo off his feet and inject the antidote into his chest. They both share a final brotherly moment together before Milo fades away into the arms of death. Michael unleashes his bats out of the ground and flies into the sky in his human-bat hybrid form, without taking the antidote which he built for himself. Back at the rooftop, Martine revives back into a vampire due to consuming Michael's blood. The movie ends with this interesting and questionable scene. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. We will see you in the next one.